Federal Reserve is the biggest fraud and a murderous fraud. People have died, millions have died because their countries don't have enough money to feed them. So this is what it's about, keeping that fraudulent fractional reserve system going. We use what's called the fractional reserve. Well, for once they were honest. They only have a fraction in reserve of what they're lending. In other words, for every $400 the bank might lend you, they don't even have $1 in there to cover it. These people have taken something that was good, something that no complex society can do without. We can't barter and have a complex society. And they took that to themselves, privatized it, and robbed every country of its God-given right to create its own money.
Carl Mamer is with us. He is the host of the Conspiracy Skeptic podcast and a contributor to the Long Run blog. Carl, welcome to The Conspiracy Show.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
The central banking conspiracy. The idea that the world is being enslaved by a cabal of international bankers who create money out of thin air and then charge usurious interest rates. What are your thoughts on that theory?
You know, I don't think it has a lot of merit. I think it's sort of a lot of paranoia. The idea of central banking, I think it was to sort of solve a major problem, from last century and the century before, to end sort of banking panics where people thought their local bank was insolvent and they would go and, try to withdraw all their money. So central banking I don't think is a conspiracy. I think it just at least tries to solve a, major economic problem.
These people love to lend to governments because when they lend to governments, then the taxes, the income taxes, all your income tax goes to pay the compound interest on a debt we don't even need to have. Our $700 billion debt that we have now, 5% of it is the actual debt. It is compounding as I speak. This is what happens when one small group takes over the medium of exchange for the whole globe. This is now a global prison. We must start issuing our own money. We must take the printing press away from these people.
Doesn't it seem odd, though, that, for example, in the United States, the Federal Reserve can literally write a check to the U.S. Treasury for $1 billion or $1 trillion, and then they charge the government interest on something that costs them only pennies to make? Doesn't that seem rather odd to you?
Not really, no, because I don't think they do it all the time. The central bank could just print money if they wanted to, but it would ruin the economy. Central bankers, they own homes, they own stocks. They don't want to have really bad runaway inflation either.
What about the theory that the Federal Reserve has actually caused recessions and depressions? In fact, I believe a head of the Federal Reserve admitted that the Great Depression of 29 to 39 was inadvertently perhaps caused by the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably true. I think what actually made the Great Depression worse was sort of a very tight monetary policy, the sort of reticence of the central bank to literally print money and inject money into the economy. But ultimately central banks are run by human beings. They have political pressure. They're not always perfect. They're going to make mistakes.